What's up guys, and welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. Today I'm reviewing the Boss RC-202 loop station. And before I even get into it, I do want to mention that if you would like to see actual demos of what this is capable of, so making music with this thing, you can check the links in the description, or you can check the end card at the end of this video. This video is going to be mostly just me talking, and what I want to talk about are its features, its limitations, and then who I recommend it for, or whether I recommend something else. Because this is an excellent product, but what you are going to want to end up buying is going to depend on what you want to use it for. So, starting off with features. This is a 2-track looper, as is probably obvious, and it allows for pretty much infinite overdubs. I've never hit a limit, and I've recorded quite a few layers, and it doesn't lose quality. Everything sounds just fine. It has 3 inputs, one stereo input back over here, or a mono if you just use one channel, a mic input, and then a little aux in right over here. So if you are, say, a guitarist and vocalist trying to do like a solo show, kind of Ed Sheeran style, you can do that. If you're a beatboxer, and maybe you have a keyboard to go with that, kind of Beardy Man style, you can do that. And if you're like me and you want to run multiple synthesizers into this thing at once, you can also do that. It's got 4 input effects, and these are recorded down into the layering, and then 4 track effects, and these can be toggled on and off, and they'll affect the track that you've selected them to affect whenever. And you can control the extremity of those effects with this knob right over here. It has a built-in metronome, and you can either set this to what you want in advance, or it can detect what the tempo is of whatever you're playing, and this can be toggled on and off. And I believe that you can have the metronome playing in your ear, but not from the stereo output. So you hear it, your audience doesn't, which is very nice. And finally, in terms of features, I've saved my favorite 2 for last. They have an undo button, which is tremendously useful. As far as I know, maybe some cheaper loopers, you just kind of have to commit to whatever you record. With this, if you record something that's just hot garbage, you can actually go back and undo it. So this is great for those of us doing improvised jams that we're going to edit down later. It allows us to do trial and error without worrying that we're going to mess everything up. And for people playing live, if you make a big enough mistake, you can just quickly undo it and then move on like nothing ever happened. The other really cool and pretty unique feature is the ability to switch between different banks of loops on the fly. So basically, let's say I record in a breakdown section, and then I want to do a drop section. Since I'm in electronic music, that's kind of the way I think, so we'll roll with it. What I can do is go to the breakdown section, layer it up a bit, and then hit a button to switch to the bank that's holding the drop section, and it'll cue that up and then play it in time with whatever the metronome's set to. Which means that even though this only has 2 tracks, you can actually build full song structures, which is something with looping that's quite a bit harder to do, or at least requires a lot of forethought. This allows you to actually have very separate verse-chorus, verse-bridge, breakdown, drop sections, which is awesome. And then real quick, I should mention the build quality of this is quite nice. The buttons and knobs are all very responsive. They feel good. This thing feels constructed pretty well. No complaints there. So with the features out of the way, let's move on to limitations, because it definitely does have some limitations. So the input effects to start off are decent, but there's a couple that they're missing that I really wish they had. So they have something called lo-fi, which is basically kind of this bit crusher meets distortion unit, but I really wish they had a proper distortion unit in there. And then same with the fact that they have a delay, but they don't have a proper reverb, which would have been useful for things like transitions and just as an overall effect. So I'm a little bummed that they don't have that. And the ring mod effect is not all that useful, so I wish they would have swapped that out for something else. Another limitation is that there are no volume sliders like there are on the 505. So once you record into here, the volume is set. You cannot change it after the fact. I don't really miss this. It's not a big deal, but I figured that this would be something good to know going in. And finally, the biggest limitation starts to kind of merge into who is this for and who do I recommend this to. The biggest limitation is the fact that there are only 2 tracks. And here's why that's such a big limitation, because yes, you can do infinite overdubbing, and yes, you can switch between different song sections, but both of those do require at least some bit of preparation or editing afterwards. So to use myself as an example, the reason I got this is so I could plug in a couple of synthesizers and drum machines and make improvised electronic music. I want to be able to make full songs or even full sets completely from scratch, on the fly, everything from techno to drum and bass, and for the most part, this is pretty good about that. However, at least for me, making a full song with like a proper structure and everything does require me to do some editing after the fact. Because to get the verse, chorus, or breakdown, build, drop structure that I'm after, I either have to do some preparation in advance, where I set up a pattern and then switch between it as I go, but I've already set that up and that's not improvised, or I just have to edit around it, which is what I end up doing, and for my application, that's fine. But if I was to be playing live and doing like a full continuous improvised set with this, I would probably want to get the 505, because the 505 actually allows you to turn up the volume sliders and turn them down so that I can drop elements out, bring everything all back in at once, and things like that. For other applications, this might be even a little overpowered. If you're, say, a singer-songwriter or a beatboxer just wanting to do some simple looping and you don't need to control the song structure so tightly, it may be worth just going in on the $100 Ditto looper and ignoring this for now unless you find you're hitting too much of a limit. A lot of people who play live with loopers are playing with songs that they've already written and that they've already rehearsed, and so there's less likelihood of a screw-up, and there's no need to tweak the song structure as you go because you just keep layering in the way that you've already planned. So if you're just trying to do something like that, this may actually be a little bit overpowered. However, the format of simply layering on top of yourself ad nauseum can be a bit limiting, so if you've hit some of those limitations or are worried that you will hit some of those limitations down the road, this would be good for you. The RC-202 works best in two situations. One, where you've got a song that you've already written and already rehearsed, and you just need to be able to have a bit more structure to the song and a bit more power and effects and control over every step of the process. That's one of the situations. The other situation is if you're recording improvised jams for the studio and you're comfortable with just editing out mistakes or editing a song structure into place after the fact. For those two applications, and I'm guessing there are quite a few of you who fit into one of those, this thing is basically flawless. It's got all the power that you'll need, all the tweakability and control that you need in a very small, well-constructed unit. However, if you want to do improvised jams in front of an audience, I would recommend passing on this and splurging on the full 505. That'll give you the actual control and flexibility that you will need to do, say, an entire improvised techno set. So, to sum all that up, the RC-202 is an extremely well-constructed, very powerful device. However, depending on what you're trying to do with it, it may be overkill, it may be exactly what you need, or it may not be flexible enough. And one other quick thing I want to mention before I end this video is that this thing does have a bit of a learning curve to it. It's really not too bad, and once you get into it, using it's pretty intuitive. But I highly recommend checking out Boss's excellent tutorial series on it. That should clear up any confusion and get you nicely acquainted with how to actually use this thing. And that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to see some examples of what this thing is actually capable of, you can click or tap up over here. And if you would like to subscribe, you can click or tap down over here. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I will be back with a new video next week. Peace!